What's it like to be a student in Japan? How does it compare with student life in the UK? And what can study in Japan lead to? Hopefully this session will give you the answers to these questions and much more. And in this session we have 3 alumni of Japanese higher education institutions who we thank, very grateful for taking the time out to come here and share their experiences with you all. So what I'm going to do is ask them each to come up in turn to give a 10 or 15 minute presentation on their experiences of living in Japan and studying at a Japanese university. And then following that, we'll open it out to the floor and you can ask your questions. Okay, so first up, we have Sofia Idrisi, who spent a year studying at Osaka University, and Sofia is a 4th year student at the School of Oriental and African Studies, SOAS, University of London. Sofia.
Thank you for coming. My name is Sofia. I lived a year in Osaka, but my university was actually Kansai University, Kansai Daigaku. I have a series of photos, and they are generally all my photos. I'm going to do the questions chronologically. So first of all, what is it like to be a student in Japan? What can I say? It's very laid back. My university with Rosanna is quite intense, so I had the same idea. However, there's been rumors that there's no homeworks and students sleep in class, which is actually quite true. So for the year abroad, it was quite minimal academically. However, it really depends on the individual. So I really focused on my travels and meeting people and experiencing Japanese culture. And I had supplementary Japanese lessons, and my degree is actually Japanese, so I was really fortunate that my Japanese was intermediate. So, you know, I could actually pass by without doing more lessons. However, these lessons were really great, really supplementary. And by the end of the year, I can proudly say I really improved on my Japanese. So the first few weeks was amazing. We just went traveling. Osaka is a beautiful place, and I just want to say, I want to advocate it, because a lot of people who don't go to Japan choose Tokyo, because Tokyo is the capital city, everyone wants to go. But please bear in mind, Japan is full of amazing places. Osaka is the 2nd largest city, so you're not going to really miss out on city life per se. Tokyo is extremely busy, but if you're a city person, that's really up to you. Osaka is lovely. It's much cheaper. Rent was much cheaper, food was much cheaper. I'd say even traveling was much cheaper actually as well. So, you know, if you haven't been to Japan and you're thinking of Tokyo, just take a minute, do some research into other prefectures as well. There's Sapporo, there's Hokkaido, there's Kyushu, there's Kobe, there's so many lovely places in Japan, so don't always think of the capital city. So what is it like to be a student? Well, you have to bear in mind some things. Japanese culture is really different. So it would be really good if you knew about Japanese etiquette and mannerisms before you went. No one really speaks in the train, which a lot of people do here. No one really talks on the phone, especially. It's quite rude. You don't see people walking with sandwiches in their mouths either. So you have to notice these things. And even though it's quite weird, you will get used to it eventually. So, is that not working? Oh, yeah, sure. Thank you. You will get used to it eventually. Taking off your shoes, but I think that's kind of worldwide known. I did loads of visits to schools because I was teaching English, and you have to take off your shoes, which sounds a bit weird, but you get to put on slippers, which is quite nice. Being a student in Japan, if your Japanese is elementary, please don't be shy. Japanese people love to make foreign friends, and they will really encourage you. Like I said, I was lucky I had my intermediate Japanese in my pocket, but even if you don't know Japanese, they would really, really help you out. A lot of Japanese people know English, of course. So, you know, even if you make mistakes, that's how you learn a language. And even if you're not there to learn the language, you know, how great would that be to do like a semester or 2 studying in Japan, but, you know how to do a jikoshokai, self-introduction in Japanese. So, you know, don't be shy when it comes to that. Just keep an open mind. Learn the mannerisms, the etiquette, and you won't have any awkward moments, hopefully. So I want to talk about living in a dorm. I was really lucky. I lived in an international dorm with a few Japanese students. So as you can see, I made really good friends. The Japanese students that lived with us were learning English. So we had an exchange. So most nights we'd make dinner together, we'll go to movies, we'll cook, and we would practice our Japanese, and they would practice speaking English to us. So how does it compare with student life in the UK? I'm sure you know Japanese universities love the concept of after-school clubs and circles, and that's actually me learning kendo for the first time, which was quite amazing. We had the New Zealand international team training with us for some reason, but it was such a great experience. Clubs, I would say they're quite tricky to get into. Japanese people are quite rigorous and strict when it comes to these things, so if you're only in Japan for a semester or two, they might not allow you into certain sport events. However, if you join a circle is a more relaxed club. I joined the cake circle, so every week we go to cafes and eat different cake, which was really nice. We had astronomy circles, music circles. I think there was a Harry Potter circle as well. So, you know, if you want to do sports, that's fine, but please don't be disappointed if they don't allow you into the club, because most of them have competitions and they take them really seriously. So they wouldn't want to train someone just to, you know, sport with them for a few weeks. So I would definitely recommend a circle. So I don't know if you know the word nomihodai, which means drink as much as you want. I'm not advocating drinking. However, as a student, drinking life is quite different to England. It is much cheaper. And you know, if you're with your friends, it's, I would say, much safer, actually, because most of these bars are right next to the university, or they'll be right next to dorms. So you'd have such a great time. And again, choosing somewhere like Osaka is so much cheaper. You can have such a great night out for, I would say, no more than 20 or 30 pounds, which is quite tricky in the UK. Yeah, so just don't do too much nomihodai, because you'll make some regrets. Spare time, personally, talking about nomihodai, I always felt safe, even as a woman, even going home at night. The crime rate is really low in Japan, and, you know, I will always recommend going home with someone, especially if it's at night. However, the trains run moderately late, and there are taxis 24/7, and I honestly felt safe in the fact that my purse could be sticking out my handbag, my phone was on the table, and there's no sense of worry, I'd say. But, you know, with England, you always have to keep your bag next to you and stuff like that. But Japan is just super safe, especially for students, someone young, someone who's never even been there before. I would say you wouldn't have to worry about that. Yeah. So comparing student life, you would have more time, especially if you're doing year abroad. I only had a few hours in the morning, and then afterwards we would go to the local dog cafe and rabbit cafe, as you can see. And you pay, I think, like $5 for a drink in 2 hours, and you just get to be around animals, which is amazing. So there's loads of things to do. There's arcades, there's karaoke, and again, like I said, super cheap, super fun, really great for student life. Yeah, that's my favorite bunny. And I went to a famous cafe in Osaka as well. Okay. So life outside of university. Oh, that's my friend doing karaoke. Yeah, on weekends, why I'm advocating Osaka is because Osaka is surrounded by so many prefectures, and it was so easy to just get the train for like £3 or £4 and go to a completely different prefecture. I went to Kobe many times. I haven't been to Kyushu, unfortunately. Wakayama, Kyoto, Nara, and every weekend you just had something to do. As you can see, we went to Minno Waterfall. That's my university when the sakura was blooming. So there's just so many things to do. I don't think a year is actually enough, never mind half a year. Oh, yeah, I'll go back to that later. Yeah, no, I'll go. Okay. Life outside. Japanese food. Okay, so everyone loves Japanese food. I would say there's only a tiny bit of a problem. Living in a dorm, you don't always want to eat out, even though it's very, very encouraging. I would say try to get minimal bentos and sushis in the supermarkets. Try and make your own food. However, vegetables and fruits are quite expensive, so you might not be able to get your 5 a day. Even just going to a restaurant would actually be cheaper than doing a week's shopping in Japan. Like I said, I had to buy multivitamin, and I know a lot of my friends got a bit ill easily because they weren't eating enough vegetables. But try as much food as you can. I have taken a picture of something called abura soba, which not a lot of even Japanese people know about. It's just ramen without the soup. It was delicious. In Kyoto, I had beans with matcha ice cream, and then Tokyo in Asakusa, I had a custard fried sweet. Oh, I just have too many pictures about food. Yeah, you could easily spend so much money on food, so try not to. Try everything traditional. If you're picky, there are so many Western restaurants, especially if you have allergies. Just talk to the waitress. You should be sorted with that. But please try and keep an open mind for food, because you're going to end up liking something that you thought you never liked before. I want to go over quickly about part-time work. So my friends and I, we all taught English, and it's called arubaito, so part-time work in Japanese. And being a university student, you are, like I keep saying, you will have free time. Teaching English is great for pocket money. You could get about 2,000 to 3,000 yen an hour, which on a good day is, I think, £20. A lot of schools don't require experience. However, once you go, you would need to have a special stamp on your part-time visa. If you don't have that stamp, you can't legally work in Japan. So when you go through customs or through the airport, make sure to get that stamp, and you'll be able to work, I think, right away. Teaching English really helped me with my pocket money. It was great fun. It's great for your CV. And even if you're not confident in teaching English, most people will hire you. You can work at bars, you can work at shops. It's a really great time to get yourself outside of the comfort zone. I didn't really like working in retail, but working in Japan, working in a few fashion shops, it was a really nice experience. And like I said, you get more money. So we have the summer, the Japanese curriculum is completely different. We go in September, however, their academic year starts in April. So we were there from September to January, but then there was Haruyasumi, which is spring break, and that's 2 months. So during those 2 months, we just all got together, traveled as much as we could within and outside of Japan. It was truly fun. So if you are staying a year in a school, try and plan for your Haruyasumi, do as much traveling as you can, and really just soak in Japanese culture. Selfie with a geisha, which is awesome. What I want to say is you definitely learn things. So she's a geiko, and she was friends with one of my history teachers in university. And you'll be surprised how many links you can get. One of my teachers, he was 6th Dan for the Kendo New Zealand team, and things like that, making you links, doing things outside of your comfort zone, you will enjoy Japan so much more than going there with a closed mind. So try as much food as you can, meet as many people as you can as well, and try not to be shy. They will most likely be more shy of you, kind of like spiders. So if you show that you can speak a bit of Japanese people flock to you and try and make friends with you, which is really nice. So why would I recommend Japan as a place to study? The friends I've made are really my friends for life. I'm still in contact with them. We have plans to meet up in Japan this year and next year. It was just such a lovely place. And, Japan is so different from studying in Europe or America, because even though you're doing your normal academic work, you can do so much on your weekend or even after schools that you would not be able to do anywhere else. It's not easy, it is far away, 13-hour flight, I think. But most of my friends and I managed by, Skyping and messaging. These small things can really help. I had friends who were homesick, but But if you just keep in contact with your friends and family, you should be fine. And that's why I encourage to live in an international dorm, because you're going to be with people who are on the same boats as you. So if you're sick of speaking Japanese or you just feel like you need to speak English, you can just let it all out. So I would definitely recommend it. I wish I could go back, to be honest, but I'm in the third year, so I can't go back just yet. If you're going there with the conception that you like certain things like pop culture, manga, anime, you will discover things that you never thought you liked. Personally, I went in with just the interest of Japanese martial arts, but I came out with a huge interest in Japanese temples, architecture and Buddhism, and that's actually my focus for my thesis this year. So yeah, going there really changed my idea about Japan, and I recommend it. Thank you for listening. If you got any questions about Osaka, probably. Oh, at the end. Okay, sorry, I'm off. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sofia. Okay, so next up we have Naomi Kolick, who is a recent graduate of Oxford University. And Naomi, you studied at Kobe University, right? I got that one right.
Okay, hello everyone. My name's Naomi. I just graduated from Oxford University, where I did Japanese studies, which was a 4-year course with a compulsory second year in Japan. And I studied at Kobe University for a year. And Oxford actually had a link with Kobe University that they had previously sort of decided on. So everyone in my year, there was only 12 of us, but we were all sent to Kobe University together, which obviously made it a little bit, less scary, because I was only in second year and I'd only been studying Japanese for 1 year. So I really was a bit of a beginner. So it was a bit of a scary experience at first, but the main aim of sending us in our second year was to help us to pick up the speaking side of Japanese really, really quickly, and it really did work. So at university, we did lots of language classes, but then we could choose our own extra classes, and I'll talk about those in a bit. So I'm just going to go through my personal experiences and some tips that I have if I could do it again, what I want to know, really. Okay, so I lived in a university dorm at Kobe University. So obviously I would say that living in Japan is quite expensive. So I was quite lucky that we were able to stay in university accommodation. I just put this photo to show off a little bit, because this is my view from my room. I really would recommend Kobe as a place to visit, or, if you were thinking of which university to go to, because it is such a beautiful city. It has a combination of big Japanese city and then beautiful nature as well. So yeah, I would recommend, I think we're all recommending that sort of area in general a little bit. I just have a map here in case that's helpful. So Kobe is just where the red dot is. And then around Kobe, about 30 minutes on the train, 30, 40 minutes away, you have the cultural capital of Japan, which is Kyoto, the sort of home place of all the traditional arts and the geisha, traditional culture. And then you have Nara, which I guess could be considered the religious capital of Japan. It was the place where, the first Buddhist temple, that one of the oldest Buddhist temples in Japan is the Todaiji with the huge Buddha. That's such an amazing site. Definitely you should go and have a look at that. So within this quite small area, there's so many fascinating places to go. So I would definitely recommend it if you were still thinking about where you might want to live in Japan. So just a quick note about funding. Like I said, Japan is quite expensive to live in. I'd say it's probably about the same as England. But there are loads and loads of different options that you can look at to find some extra funding as a foreign student or as a foreign worker. So I'm sure you all had a look at the Daiwa Foundation booth. That's an example of an organisation in England that sort of provides funding for foreign students to study in Japan. And then there are other options. So there's a similar other foundations such as the Sasakawa Foundation based in England. And then we were very lucky in that we received scholarship from the university itself. Now, Japanese universities are really keen for foreign students to come and study with them. So there's a very, very high possibility that you might be able to find university funding for international students. And then another option, if you're not actually looking to go and study in Japan, there are many, many companies and organizations which really would like foreign students or foreign workers to come and work for them, which will provide, for example, the money for the plane fare, or will help you find accommodation so that you can go over there and work for them. So there's many different options that you can look at for funding, just in case you're a bit worried about that side of things. So you've arrived in Japan, you're a bit terrified, like I was. The Japanese is perhaps not quite there yet. The first thing that you need to do is sign up for a couple of things to establish yourself as a resident in Japan. So the first thing is the foreign residence card. So you need to go to the local government office to register. That's my one, if you can't tell, to register for a foreign resident card. And then you need to go to, I think it's the post office, the national health insurance, and the bank to set up your bank account. So it's quite a lot of paperwork that you do have to go through when you get there. But normally at Japanese universities, you're assigned a student who will help you go through all those things. So you don't have to worry too much. I actually, unfortunately, did a lot of signing of paperwork, and I wasn't sure what I was signing up for, and a lot of handing over of money. So my tip is to try and be aware of all the different initial sort of bureaucracy that you do have to go through, and try and figure out what it is you're actually signing up for. And then the center picture is just a picture of my dormitory, the university dormitory. So once you've sort of established yourself and you're a resident of Japan and you're all sorted, it's a really great idea to get to know your local area a bit, and to try and, figure out ways in which you could get involved in the community a bit more. Because the main aim of, for us, I think, as students of Japanese, the main aim of going to Japan is to improve spoken Japanese as much as possible, and to learn about Japanese culture. So you can go and have an explore, and there'll always be really, really lovely Japanese temples and shrines in your area. And they'll have local festivals quite regularly that you can get involved in and go and see. And then in terms of practicality, it's good to find out where your nearest convenience store is, because that's where you'll be paying your bills, which is pretty convenient. And then, cheap supermarkets. The public transport is amazing in Japan. It's really, really cheap and really, really efficient, so you'll love it. So things like that. It's good to get to know your sort of local area when you first arrive. So just a quick note on festivals. These are just some pictures from festivals that I went to. There's such a huge variety of festivals in Japan, and they're such a great way to get to know Japanese culture and, traditions, and to get involved in your local community, because there are sort of local festivals, and then there are like big nationwide ones which are really, really famous, like New Year or cherry blossom viewing. And they're so interesting. Like this bottom one was, I'm still not sure, but it was basically the festival of lots of men trying to climb up a rope. I'm still not 100% sure what was going on in that one. Sometimes they're a bit confusing, but overall it's a really, really fascinating view of sort of Japanese culture, and it's a nice way to sort of meet people and talk to people. And sometimes through your connections, you might even get to take part in a festival, for example, carrying the shrine, or walking through the street shouting things. So that's always really fun as well. So definitely check out some festivals. So I went to Kobe University. My university was chosen for me by my, there was a connection, so I didn't have a choice in which university I went to. But if you are choosing, I would say basically just look at all the things that you would look at for an English university. So sort of accommodation, location, things like that. Then a good thing to take a look at for Japanese universities is how large the foreign student population is, because if there's quite a large foreign student population, the chances are there'll be lots of support, like financially helping you find accommodation and so forth, for foreign students. So that's quite a good thing to look at if you're choosing a university. Yeah, and I would definitely recommend Kobe because that's definitely got a large population, and we were definitely very looked after when we were over there. So at university, I did language classes, and then we were also able to choose extra classes as well, which was a great way to actually have lessons with other Japanese students, which is quite important really, because the language classes in Japan tend to be very sort of intense and based on lots of tests and textbook-related work, and maybe not so much practical, everyday, spoken Japanese. So if you can have as much sort of interaction and, friendships with other Japanese students as possible, that out of class, I think, will be the time when you'll really be able to improve your spoken Japanese as opposed to your character writing, for example. So it's a great idea to try and be able to have some classes with other Japanese students as well. So I was just going to make a comment on my extra classes. There were so many different things that you could choose from, and often at Japanese universities, they'll have classes which are geared towards teaching foreign students about Japanese culture. So there was a class I took which was called art class, but it basically involved visiting museums in the local area. And then I did French philosophy, which was a bit strange. It was English, French, and Japanese in one class. That was a bit mad. But any classes that involve other Japanese students and learning about Japanese culture and history are a really good idea. So we had the opportunity to go on lots of university trips as well, which were organised by the university and were, again, specifically for the purpose of teaching the foreign students more about Japan. In Japan, the Japanese people in general, actually, but the universities in particular, are really keen to show foreign students how wonderful their country is, basically, and how fascinating their culture is. So we were taken on trips to, here we have Hiroshima, a really tiny, amazing village called Surashiki. That's the famous sort of gate in the sea near Hiroshima. And then there was also an organisation within the university that specifically organised trips that international students and foreign students to go on together, which was really nice. So university trips are a really, really good way to explore Japan. So a quick tip about extracurricular activities. I actually think that a lot of my language learning occurred, as I said, outside of the classroom, when I was able to try out some traditional Japanese activities. I was actually able to take calligraphy classes for the year with a Japanese lady who she knew the receptionist at my university, and they were really, really fun. And again, Japanese teachers are really keen to teach foreigners about their culture, so I was actually able to take the lessons for free for the whole year, which was very lucky, just because I was a foreign student and she'd never taught a foreigner before, basically. They were really amazing. Again, great language practice. Calligraphy is always good to practice for your character learning. So if you can find out about extracurricular activities, either at your university or in your area, and I think I would say go for circles rather than clubs, because clubs are really intense and sort of, really, really intense and more official, I suppose, whereas circles are a bit more casual and you can eat cake or do calligraphy a bit more casually and it's a bit less intimidating. So try and find some circles, try and find out in your local area if there are any activities, and definitely go for learning some traditional Japanese arts, because it's a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, really. So another tip, if you can get an opportunity to do a homestay with a Japanese family, I would definitely recommend that. We were just offered through the university to do a 2-week homestay, and my Japanese ability shot up during that time, because basically it was either speak Japanese or I'm not sure. I had to survive by speaking only Japanese because they couldn't speak any English. So my Japanese ability rose quite a lot. And then I went and stayed with my friend in her traditional Japanese house as well. And that's daikon, in case anyone's wondering, like a Japanese radish there. It was really fun. So homestays are really, really great. If you can do those, then that's such a great opportunity. I just had a quick tip that I wanted to share because I wish I'd sort of known more about it when I went over there. When you do go, if you are studying Japanese at university or intending to study Japanese formally, it's a really, really great idea to pick up certain things in Japan. The key things are textbooks and books in Japanese, and also electronic dictionaries. I would really, really recommend getting one of these. They're a little bit expensive, but you will use it all the time. And they have such a huge range of things on them. So they have like various different dictionaries, like classical dictionaries, modern dictionaries, but then they have things like, you know, huge archives of recipes, which I discovered on mine recently. It's really amazing little devices. So I recommend electronic dictionaries, and lots of Japanese books in Japanese for reading practice are a really great idea. So overall, I think my impression of my year abroad and my conclusion would be that the main aim should be to try and sort of work on your spoken Japanese and work on integrating into Japanese society and learning about Japanese culture as much as possible. Because whilst the studying side is obviously important, I don't want to, I want to still promote the studying. It's the stuff outside of the classroom which will really, be most important in terms of your knowledge of Japan and your language ability. So definitely try and speak as much as possible, try and get out there and meet as many people as possible, and definitely try traditional Japanese art. Yes, I think that's everything. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Naomi. And so our last speaker for this session is Rosanna Jackson, who, like Sofia, is a current student at the School of Oriental and African Studies at the University of London. And Rosanna has fairly recently returned from a year at Kyushu University. So, Rosanna.
Hello, and thank you very much. I think this distance is about safe. So one thing I've noticed actually is that probably our talks don't cover the scope and diversity of the audience today. And I've spoken with so many people, and everyone is coming from so many different paths, be it doing their postgrad research, having a quirky, sudden passion to just go and do something crazy, or devoting their life to studying language. What I would then like to focus on is what you can gain from these several perspectives. And the main perspective for me, and how I gained the most out of going to Japan, was by realizing that it is a very different culture. And so if you go there to try and acknowledge these differences and that you can gain so many cultural experiences, you will probably be able to make the most of going there. So as opposed to going to the States or to European countries, just by going to Japan, the atmosphere is very different, and the interactions with people is very different. And if you open up your mind to that, that will probably be the biggest benefit by choosing to study in Japan. My main focus was the language. So, of course, I'm part of the School of Oriental and African Studies, and I study Japanese and Chinese as my focus. Japanophile, but I prefer Japanologist. But I think it's great when you do use the language because, as many people say again and again, it is the key.
Sorry, just a little bit further back.
Yes, thank you. Is that okay? Okay. Is this more comfortable? Yes. So if you go with the language, then you will probably be able to get a better understanding of what is happening in your day-to-day life environment. So even if you're there thinking, okay, I want to work in Japan, or I want to travel there, I want to do a language program, if you make your day-to-day experience based on sort of learning the language and acquiring that, you can then do much more in your studies and do much more traveling, be more independent. So I think that should be the sort of first thing to think about. The second thing is if you're not putting language as your priority and that the bigger goal in your life now is further studies, is perhaps moving your work life to Japan, then doing a study abroad in Japan or a short study in Japan will be beneficial for Japanese work experience or any work experience in general in life. People often say that when you go to a place that is so different from your own environment, that is when you learn the most. And I really agree in this sense. You don't pick Japan because you want the familiarity of the European atmosphere. You pick Japan because you want to go to the deep end and you want to understand a different perspective than your own. So that carries on with life experience, I suppose. Well, regardless if you think that you can make money from this, if you think it's maybe not useful, ultimately doing a study in Japan will be an incredible life experience for you. I cannot tell you how many people I've met just because we have both gone to Japan and we both have a similar understanding of what it's like to go to a place so different. We've been able to bond, and maybe one day that person could be your future boss, maybe. But another thing is that going and choosing a place different from your own, of course, if you are someone from East Asia, the coming here to UK in contrast might be a big difference. But Japan is always known for its peculiarities, and so that's why I recommend it rather than just a general sort of East Asian experience. Japan has a lot of historical, unique cultural aspects to offer as well. And this brings about changes and challenges to yourself. And of course, I put Get Famous down there because one of my friends actually, it comes in with this idea of maybe having a privilege card of being a foreigner in Japan, which you shouldn't, I think, always use. But if you do sometimes use that, you can get very easily on the radio, on TV, because they love your enthusiasm for learning Japanese and wanting to get involved. But yes, it gives other normal Japanese people the image that all foreigners are somehow famous, in a way, sometimes. So again, I can only really talk about my perspective the best because that's the only one I know, but I was at Kyushu University. I won't advocate Kyushu as it's the best place to go. It was the best place for me, but by all of us saying that our place was the best place to go, I think it just shows that wherever you go is fantastic in general. And if you do go for the language, you are in Japan wherever you go. So you will always be able to do something with that. Being part of an exchange program in specific is a very flexible lifestyle. You can tailor it to what you need to do and what you want to do. And for me, I'm interested in Sino-Japanese international relations, so I looked at politics and economic situations between the countries. And I was able to do that while studying Japanese to a high level because it was flexible. I think an exchange program, as we saw with Sophie's amazing photos of her million friends, that it's a very people-orientated experience. It's about making these friends and these connections with your teachers and also with your fellow international students who go to Japan. And often the international students in Japan become your best friends because you have both picked at the same time to come there for your own reasons. But that can be a strong bonding point. Doing an exchange program and studying in Japan is a chance to immerse yourself. I think in our day-to-day lives, we sort of take for granted the amazing culture that we're in and the people around us. But when you're going somewhere for a short amount of time, you feel, actually, no, I have to make the most of everything. And so to give you that perspective and chance, to realize that these sort of study abroads, and particularly in Japan, push you to explore as much as you can. Some people have mentioned about the differences in education. If you're doing your research, it will be different. It's much more focused on you. If you're an undergraduate student, then it's in a classroom and that you sort of memorize what the teacher gives to you. And Japanese life is very community focused. So you can decide as a foreigner to sort of be in the foreign community, but I would really recommend that you sort of try to push yourself past your comfort zone and get part of that local community, which you have much more of in places like Kyushu, in Kansai or in Kobe, rather than Tokyo. And And then one thing that changed my experience was living in halls. Some of my friends lived by themselves, and so just because they weren't able to access as many things in the community, they sort of felt maybe a little bit more isolated. Other people perhaps felt more relieved and independent. So I'm afraid it goes back into study, because that's what I did, but most of the time. It is an opportunity when you do go for this study abroad to perhaps do something different than you have been doing for now. So perhaps you come from a degree in science and you haven't done language so much, but you're going abroad to focus on your language. It gives you this opportunity. You learn about another culture, and not just learning about Japanese culture, but that process of learning about another culture makes you reflect about your own culture and other cultures around us. And so that's a very important benefit you can gain. Many people have mentioned circles and societies, being bukatsudo, which is more formal. I think they're great if you want to get a bit intensive and make a commitment to those group of friends and sort of get involved. Being in Japan in Japanese universities for undergraduate mostly is perhaps less pressure because it's a learning experience. The hardest thing is the nyugakishiken, the entrance exam for the university, and then they sort of allow you to think about your life. And then when you know what you want to do and you decide your research, then they're quite intense. And I think Naomi's mentioned scholarships very well. So apart from being a samurai in my part-time, there's actually a great temple called Dazaifu in Fukuoka, and this is where this picture was taken. I just put my head there, it's not a costume. But I did a lot of trying to get involved in the community. So I did a Japanese-speaking job, arubaito, part-time job at an onsen. So it was quite bizarre, sort of knowing sometimes more than the Japanese people what one should do in an onsen, and volunteering and projects, internships, traveling, hitchhiking, and it's up to you what you want to do. This is not something you have to do, but hitchhiking I would definitely recommend. Heading down to Nagoya. I think this reflects back how it's your life experience. This is my host sister. My part-time job's at the top, the onsen, and then a more formal sort of internship environment. And this was very, me and the German girl, we were the only foreigners in this onsen. We were speaking Japanese because no one else spoke English, trying to bridge, perhaps when international visitors came, sometimes they didn't know quite how to use an onsen, so we would explain that. And this for me stays with me forever, and that these moments outside university also pushed my Japanese, because for me my priority was the language. This is Oita-ken, Oita Prefecture, and it's famous for its onsens. The last thing I'd go back to is this self-reflection, because each of us have gone with our own different ideas of what we want and need, and everyone here has their own goals. So it's about asking yourself if Japan is the right place, if you want that cultural immersion. The second thing is then, if you've decided Japan is the place, well, find out more. A lot of people in my classes, as students, sometimes last minute pick a university, perhaps the most famous one, it's like in Tokyo, and realize they didn't enjoy it. And others are absolutely fine, but had they just done a little bit more research, you learn so much more about where you're going. You see that this place is culturally really strong. This place is really good for history, and so you can tie in what Japan has to offer and tie in with what you would like to do. And then the last thing is, it really comes down to your individual person. And you guys are all here motivated, sitting here, so I think this is already the first steps. And now you just have to consider the next things to get you from here to what you would like to do in Japan. So I'd say it's all about making your Japan experience. We are one of many, but we're each having our own experience. So thank you very much.
Rosanna, thank you very much. Okay, so I think we've got about 5 minutes for Q&A. So does anybody have any questions for our alumni? No questions?
Hi. Okay. So you mentioned that it's relatively relaxed doing an undergraduate one, and you said like it then becomes significantly more intense again when people find where they're researching or into work. Is that? Are you able to expand on that at all, or just? Yes, that was from what you said.
Hello. Okay. Expand on in the sense that. Okay, I'll interpret it. So it's the idea that when I think there's a cultural difference towards education as well. So for Japan, there is this links with the idea of prestigeness, how prestige your background is. So if the children go to very good high schools, then they tend to go to great universities, and it's the name that sort of serves quite a lot. Of course, they work very hard to get there, but I think people go for a steady path in many steady disciplines, law in a science field, economics, history. They do something steady that gets them to a good educational institution, and then once they're into that top university, not everybody wants to go and do a master's and a PhD. So they've sort of, and they know that when you go to work after, it can be quite intense as a Japanese person to work in Japanese companies, because the work life is very demanding and there is many expectations of you. So in that sense, especially for Japanese students, and as an international student, you're not expected to sort of be passionately following what you want to study as an undergraduate. It's, if anything, a space to relax, because later on when you work in Japan, it's so heavy. If you then come and do your research, they know that you're paying and you've thought extra about why you want to do this research and why you specifically want to carry on in education. So they know that you're serious about becoming something in that field, which is why then they try to tailor things and get the correct professors with you to help you with your research, and it becomes down to you then. I hope that's answered it.
There was a question at the back.
Hello. Thank you to all the speakers for your sharing your experience, and I think the reflections have been very positive, which is great. But could you elaborate sort of what was your biggest challenge, not only linguistically because you were studying the language, but something that you really tried to, you struggled with and didn't think you'd struggle with, and sort of tips for other students of how to deal with those challenges?
Personally, it's not working. Personally, I think it was a distance. Even though I've been to Japan before, Japan is 8 to 9 hours ahead of time, and it was quite tricky. Even though I had, the internet and messaging to contact my parents and my friends, it was still hard to have that direct connection. I think you have to be a bit aloof and a bit selfish once you go. You have to really focus on yourself and not think about, how is so-and-so doing at home, or how is everyone else back home. You really have to, like I said, you have to be a bit selfish. You have to look after yourself. And even if it means missing a Skype call or interview with your parents, then so be it. That was my struggle, and I managed to successfully not get homesick, which was quite good for me. How about you?
For me, hello. For me, it was the fact that I had been sent over to Kobe University in a group of the rest of the people in my year. So we were actually put in sort of special classes for Japanese study. So at first it was a little bit difficult to sort of integrate into the wider Japanese student population, because I think if you are quite nervous and you haven't been to Japan before and you can't really speak Japanese that confidently, and it's pretty easy to fall back into the safety net of only really hanging around with other international students or students who've come there with you from your own university, which I think it's fine to begin with. It's good, it's good to feel sort of safe and secure in, scary new world. But it's really, important to try and then branch out and make friends, in the wider Japanese student population, and try out some, like I said, some maybe extracurricular activities that will involve you, stepping out your comfort zone, and instead of sort of just hiding away with the international students. I think that I found that a bit scary at first, but you do sort of get used to it once you make the first steps.
Thank you for your question, and I think it's a really important one. I think I always think about things a bit too abstractly, but one thing that was a shock that I didn't think would be a shock was this fact that I grew up in a very multicultural environment, now that we're in London particularly, you look left and right to you and you have so many people from so many different backgrounds, and we just take this for granted. But I went to Japan, and I'm a minority there, and many of us understand what this means, but we don't really understand what that means. And every day being noticed as sort of an outsider in a society, and you're not the main focus of that society, can be difficult. So I'd just like to mention that, yes.
Okay, I think we can squeeze one more question in, if anybody has a question. No? Well, our 3 alumni will be here. Oh, I'm so sorry. We've got one more question down here.
Thank you so much for the presentation. So it might be a slightly silly question, but you mentioned that it's good to research how big the international student community is at each university. And I just wondered whether that's publicized by universities, or how easy that information is to access.
Well, hello. In terms of Kobe University, I can speak from my experience, and they're very keen to sort of show off their foreign student population, actually, because it's something they're really proud of. And I think that would be the same for a lot of Japanese universities. As a general rule, Japanese universities are really, really keen for international students to come and study with them because it makes them look really good. And I think they will definitely make that clear on their websites, for example, or in any sort of publications. And then if you are coming from your home university in England or wherever, your university will be able to give you information on that as well. But yeah, I reckon they'll probably advertise it quite a lot on websites, and then there's forums. I'm sure you could find Japanese student forums on the internet, which will have people commenting on those sort of things. Yeah, so if you have a bit of a research, I'm sure you'll be able to find out.
Okay, so I think we're going to have to bring the session to a close there, I'm afraid. But our 3 alumni will be here until 6 o'clock this evening. So if you do have any questions, please go up to the ground floor, to the alumni booth, and feel free to ask. But I'd like to say a huge thank you to Sofia, to Naomi, and to Rosanna for taking the time to come here today and share their experiences with us. Thank you.